Hi guys, this is SDJRSNF88 speaking with the third update on the World War I Trench Railway project. And as you can see, there's been plenty of progress regarding the baseboards. So without further ado, let's get into this update. So as you can see, we're outside, and with the recent good spell of weather, I thought it'd be a good idea to get round and start building the baseboards. So as you can see, this 2 foot by 4 foot MDF board, which featured in the previous update with the roughed out markings of where I wanted all the scenery to be, and of course the test track plan on there, it is now a fully complete baseboard. So what I've done is we've got the battens, and which were out of shot in the previous update, and we've cut them down to size. We have a long one on the front, a long one on the back, which is then screwed into 3 shorter ones, one on each end, and then one in the centre just there. And you can see the screws where they're screwed through to those there. The battens themselves are glued and pinned actually onto the MDF, and then they're screwed through. And as you can see, the board is now a lot more rigid. There's no flex in that board whatsoever, which is perfect. Just what I want, so it obviously can be carried around with ease, and I won't have to worry about any of the scenery getting damaged on there. It's also very light, which is a real bonus. Obviously, I plan to take this layout around solo most of the time, and of course carrying this, again, in and out of my little car, it was the main priority, and this does fit in the back of my car, which is perfect. Something which I had trouble with Compton Martin, which, as you all know, was my first exhibition layout, which was 2 4 foot, it's a 3 foot by 4 foot board times 2. And that was very, very heavy, very cumbersome, and needed a van to be transported around it. It took 2 people to lift each one-piece section. So this is a complete change from that, and really designed with taking this to shows in mind. So here's behind the back scene, and as you can see, we've got the 3 supports that I mentioned, and we've got the 2 tunnel portals, and this is the area that I've got to play with for the locomotive and rolling stock storage. So hopefully, fingers crossed, if the track plan up in the loft was correct, I should have room for a passing loop. So 1 long loop at the front, 1 slightly shorter loop in the middle, and then a long siding there on the inside. Now that is all fingers crossed. I do hope it fits. As of course we did try it out, as you saw, and it did fit, so hopefully it will work. I may even add an extra little siding, only a little short one, just on the end here, which will connect onto the end of the longer passing loop, and I might use that for unloading and reloading rolling stock with a little re-railer, so that might be a possible idea as well. Down at the other end, of course, is where all the electrics will be, so I have the little controller mounted down there, and of course any other electronics I plan to add to the layout at a later date. So as well as the baseboards, I've also been working on painting the Marquand Tank. And as you can see, it's been painted, and I'm very pleased with how it has come out. I've decided to paint it olive drab. There's been a bit of debate by historians as to what colour these tanks actually were. Some seem to think they might have been khaki drab, and others olive drab. I've decided to go for the latter, purely because the majority of World War I tanks down in the Bovington Tank Museum are painted in this livery. So I've decided to go for that one, and it suits the tank quite well. One thing I've also done is I've painted the iconic white and red lining on the front, and I'm very pleased with how that has come out. There's a bit of an optical illusion going on from this angle. The red line doesn't look quite straight, but I can assure you from the side it is actually almost spot on. I think what's happening here is there's a raised suspension section which you can see, which part of the red line goes through it. It sort of gives the effect that it's not painted, but it is, and I'm really pleased with how it's come out. The next step for this tank would be, of course, to weather it up, but I'm going to wait till I've got round to doing the scenery so I know what colour to weather the tank, so obviously it matches the mud that it's going to be driving through. With this one nearly complete now, I can start cracking on with the other tanks, and over the past couple of weeks I've built up quite a collection of military vehicles which will be joining this one. So without further ado, we'll go back up into the loft and take a look at some of the other vehicles that I've purchased over the past couple of weeks. So the first new addition is this Mk4 mail tank kit. Now, I originally hoped to get a Mark V, but they don't appear to make it in the correct scale which I need. So I've gone for a Mark IV, and the Mark IVs did play a massive role during the Battle of Amiens as well. surprisingly, 1,200 of these tanks were built, and quite a few of them fell into German hands. And as you can see, one of the camos that you can paint this tank in is in fact a German booty tank camo. I believe that's what they called them, was the nickname for them when they were captured by the Germans. Surprisingly, as you can see on the back of this box, there's also a number of other World War I tank kits, including a female Mark IV, a Whippet, which we'll come on to in a minute, and then there's also a German A7V tank, which was the Germans' own tank, and surprisingly only 20 of them were built. So you got 20 of these A7Vs, and then you got 1,200 of these Mark IVs, which is, really is amazing. And considering when the Germans got to World War II, their tanks were formidable, and yet in World War One, our tanks vastly outnumbered theirs. So anyway, I'm gonna have fun building this Mark IV. It's probably going to be in the same livery as the Mark I, which you previously saw. There's some really nice transfers for British tanks in this kit, so I'm probably going to go with one of those camos, but it's going to be olive drab to match the other one, and I look forward to building it. Next up, we have this Mark A Whippet tank, which is a machine gun tank. And yeah, these were widely used during the Battle of Amiens, so having one of these on the layout is a must. If I flip this over, we've got a brief history on the back about the actual tank, which is very, very interesting. One thing that I didn't know about these is they actually had two separate engines and two gearboxes. Each engine drove its own individual track, so I can only imagine it must have been very confusing and a very interesting vehicle to drive. As you can see, we've got an alternative livery on the back. Again, it's another German camo, so this one could also have been captured by the Germans. But I'm going to paint it in the camo, which is of course on the front, and possibly this camo itself, because it does mention the Battle of Amiens quite a lot on the back of the box. I'm probably even thinking this livery is actually what the tank might have actually carried during this battle. So I look forward to painting this one up and having it alongside the other two male tanks on the layout. Something different to tanks now, and we have this artillery set, which includes a 4-wheel drive 3-ton truck, ammunition cart, and howitzer artillery gun. Now, you can never have enough artillery on this layout, so I thought it'd be nice to get another artillery gun in on there somewhere. And I've got plans to position this truck and the cart and the gun in the courtyard of the farm on the left side of the layout, with the gun sort of lodged in the hedge, with the barrel facing up over the top towards the enemy lines, which are a couple of miles in the distance. Again, these guns are very iconic during the war. One feature that I quite like about this design is the use of what I presume were traction engine wheels. Now, my only guess for this is that during the war, quite a lot of factories were employed, including rail works and other foundries, to produce guns and ammunition for the war effort. And I presume that this gun, when they produced it to make it easy to maneuver around, i.e. having the wheels on it, they just used the mould from a traction engine wheel to produce the wheels for it, which I think is quite a nice and interesting design for the gun. And I'm really glad that I've managed to find one in model form, and I look forward to positioning this on the layout once it's been built and painted up. And the final kit for the moment is this Mack AC refueling truck. Now, as I mentioned, the layout is going to depict a servicing area for tanks, where they'll be refueled and of course rearmed for the next assault. So I thought a refueling truck would be a very nice feature to have parked alongside one of the tanks. Now, surprisingly, being a truck, I thought this kit would be easier to build than the tanks. It doesn't look like there's very many parts to this tank, just maybe the bonnet, the cab, the wheels, and obviously the refueling bed on the back. Now, how I was wrong. Now, if I just bring over the parts for the kit itself, as you can see, there are absolutely hundreds of little bits and pieces to build this truck. And reading the instructions, you build absolutely everything. You assemble the engine, the gearbox, all the suspension, each individual suspension on each corner of the truck. The wheels are all little multiple bits. You even got to put the tyre on the wheel. It's absolutely amazing. So this one I think is going to be quite tedious to build. Another thing as well, underneath the truck bed itself, so just there, you've got all the pipes, which obviously would have fed the fuel into the tanker, from the tanker to the truck, so the tanks, I should say. And all of that is all, again, individual pipes and bits and pieces which you've got to build. So this kit is really going to be an interesting one. Even the artillery set has less parts in this kit, which I think is very interesting. So I'm going to have fun building this one, but again, I think it's a very good little truck to have. And I think it'll really set the scene with sort of the refueling going on and the rearmouring of the tanks. I think this truck is really perfect for that job. And last, but certainly not least, we have a new locomotive addition to the layout, in the form of this mini train's brigade lock locomotive and matching water tender. Now these are the first two items of German rolling stock that will be seen on the layout, which have of course been captured by the Allies and is now being used to aid their offensive. And I must say, like the Baldwin, I'm really pleased with this model. The level of detail on this and the fine pipe work is really outstanding, and it's a really nice, smooth, slow and powerful runner as well. Another little surprise for this one, it also has directional lighting, but unlike the Baldwin, it also has a second headlight on the rear of the locomotive, which shines in the direction of whichever way the locomotive is going. The water tender is also very well detailed. There's lots of fine handrails and bits of pipe work on there as well, and little bits of etched metal detail as well. And I've seen photos of these locomotives in action on the German side, and quite often these locomotives were paired up with these water tenders. So I think they'll make a nice little combo on the layout to sort of show the sort of what the German materials they've had with a sort of allied twist. So I plan to add an allied crew to the cab to obviously show that it's been captured, is now going to be used against the Germans that sort of built it. So anyway, that's all for this update. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's been quite a lot of show and tell of what new additions have arrived on the layout, but in truth it's been very hot up in the loft over the past couple of sort of weeks, and haven't been able to work on the actual track work or anything itself. But I have managed to get the baseboards done, which is of course the main sort of bit that needs to be done at the moment, because once the baseboards are fully complete, then I could really start getting around to laying the track and of course cracking on with the scenery as well. So I hope you enjoyed this update. And I thought a nice way to round off this video for a change is to actually show a real snippet of a real brigade lock in action, which I filmed a couple of months ago at the Gloucester Warwickshire Railway. So I'm going to leave you with this clip now. And anyway, this has been SDJR SNF88 speaking, and thanks for watching.